he wouldn't have access to Muslims and the Quran in England at that time, a very repressive society. But a good case can be made, I think, that his fitra, this is a Quranic term, meaning his God-given natural disposition.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahilladzi arsala rasulahu bil huda wa dinil haqq liyuzhinahu ala dini kullihi wa kafa billahi syahida. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la syarikalah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu la nabiyya ba'da. Berjumpa lagi dengan channel saya Mars Techno. Saya doakan semoga semua sahabat dalam keadaan sehat selalu. Pada video kali ini kami akan menampilkan pernyataan dari seorang teolog Inggris dalam channel YouTube-nya bahwa dia meyakini pujangga besar Inggris William Shakespeare adalah seorang Muslim. Nah sahabat, mari kita saksikan bersama-sama videonya dan saya hanya sedikit mereaksinya.
Was William Shakespeare a Muslim? I will give you my final thoughts about this question at the end of the video. Now, in this video, I just want to share with you some words from William Shakespeare, the great English playwright and poet who died just over 400 years ago. I think he had, in many ways, an Islamic understanding of God. And this comes out in his plays, particularly in this play called The Merchant of Venice. Here's my copy, William Shakespeare, The Merchant of Venice, published by Penguin Classics. Now, there's a part in this play where one of the characters talks about mercy, the quality of mercy as an attribute of God. Now, of course, in Islam, mercy is an attribute of God. We have Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, which begin every surah, every chapter of the Quran, apart from one. And that's usually translated as the most compassionate, most merciful. So it has ideas of cherishing and mercy and compassion. And we find this in Shakespeare too. I just want to read it to you. It's about a dozen lines. Now, I won't go too much into the story of the Merchant of Venice. On the back cover, we read a very brief summary. It says, Antonio, a Venetian merchant, that means a businessman basically from Venice, a Venetian merchant, wishes to help his friend get money to impress a rich heiress. But he is forced to borrow the sum from a cynical, abused Jewish moneylender, Shylock. And he's the central bad character of the play. And Antonio signs a chilling contract to honor the debt with a pound of his own flesh. And that means literally a pound of his own flesh. Now, what I'm going to do is just read you about a dozen lines. As I say, I won't go too much into the story. You can Google it if you want to see a more detailed synopsis of the play. And it's an amazing play. I do recommend it. There's some marvelous productions you can see online. So I'm going to read it to you. Then I'm going to quote a couple of hadith. And these are sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, which I think say exactly the same thing. So I'm going to quote from Act 4, Scene 1, and I think it goes like this. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show likest gods when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this. that in the course of justice none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. I have spoken thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follow this strict court of Venice, must needs give sentence gainst the merchant there. So that's that play. It's an extraordinary piece of writing. Now, in a hadith, we read that Abu Huraira reported that the Messenger of God, upon whom be peace, said, when Allah completed the creation, he wrote in his book with him upon the throne, verily my mercy prevails over my wrath. My mercy prevails over my wrath. Exactly the same idea there. Source, of course, is Bukhari and Muslim, meaning it's completely authentic. And there's another hadith narrated by Abu Huraira, and he reported again that Muhammad, upon whom be peace, said, the good deeds of any person will not make him enter paradise. None can enter paradise through his good deeds. They, the Prophet's companions, said, not even you, O Messenger of God? He said, not even myself, unless Allah bestows his favor and mercy on me. Again, that's from Sahih al-Bukhari. So just to push this point home, salvation is ultimately based on the mercy of God. Of course, works are extremely important, but ultimately mercy admits us to paradise, and not the sacrifice of a human being who has to be tortured to death on a cross before somehow God is enabled to forgive us. It's not the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. And mercy and forgiveness are of the essence of Jesus's teaching too, as they are of the Hadith and in our greatest English playwright, William Shakespeare, who clearly understood this attribute of God to be mercy. As he says in this passage I've read from The Merchant of Venice, that in the course of justice, none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same mercy doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. So in other words, in the course of justice, if we were just to be judged by pure justice alone, none of us would see salvation. None of us would pass. We've all fallen short. We've all sinned, of course. And therefore we will be condemned by the strict justice standards of justice. We are all condemned. So we do pray for mercy. And that same prayer teaches us also to render the deeds of mercy. In other words, to be merciful to others. Just as we have been shown mercy, we are to show mercy to other people as well. So this, of course, is very Islamic, and also which is to say the same thing, of course, it's very much the teaching of Jesus too, because Jesus, in the Muslim understanding, was a Muslim prophet, meaning he was one who submitted his will to God. That's what Muslim means in Arabic. That's what it means in the Quran. It's not some kind of special thing to do with the Middle East. It's our disposition to surrender our wills to God. And so Abraham and Jesus, Moses, Muhammad were all Muslims in this Quranic sense. Peace be upon them all. So to conclude, was William Shakespeare a Muslim? I doubt he knew much, if anything, of the Quran and Sunnah in the repressive Christian England of his day. So he lived partly under the reign of Elizabeth I, who had many Catholics put to death or persecuted, and under James as well, who produced the famous King James Bible. He wouldn't have access to Muslims and the Quran in England at that time, a very repressive society. But a good case can be made, I think, that his fitra, this is a Quranic term, meaning his God-given natural disposition, his fitra directed him to a true conception of God, such that he held to an Islamic conception of God nonetheless. And to that extent, he was Muslim. Yes, I would argue, controversially. Until next time.
Masya Allah, sebuah ulasan pemikiran yang sangat menarik dari sebuah channel blogging teologi yang dikelola oleh Paul Williams yang berbasis di London dan juga Prancis Selatan. William Shakespeare adalah seorang penulis drama dan pujangga besar Inggris yang meninggal 400 tahun yang lalu. Menurutnya, dalam banyak hal dia memiliki pemahaman Islam tentang Tuhan. Hal ini muncul dalam sebuah drama yang berjudul The Merchant of Venice. Beliau menunjukkan sebuah novel yang berjudul The Merchant of Venice yang diterbitkan oleh Penguin Klasik. Menurut beliau, ada beberapa dari drama tersebut di mana berbicara tentang rahmat atau rasa welas asih. Rahmat yang sangat banyak sebagai sifat dari Tuhan. Tentunya di dalam agama Islam ada sifat Tuhan yaitu rahmat, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim yang disebutkan dalam lafaz basmalah dalam memulai semua surat pada bagian Al-Quran yang diterjemahkan dalam bahasa Indonesia yaitu dengan menyebut nama Allah yang Maha Pengasih dan Maha Penyayang. Jadi beliau mengutip beberapa adegan dalam drama tersebut. Rahmat yang berkualitas tidaklah kaku. Itu turun seperti hujan lembut dari surga ke tempat di bawahnya. Ini 2 kali rahmat. Ia memberkati, dia yang memberi dan dia yang mengambil. Yang Maha Kuat itu menjadi raja yang bertahta. Yang lebih baik dari mahkotanya itu menunjukkan sifat kekuatan untuk kekuatan sementara. Semua sifat dan keagungan di mana dia duduk, rasa takut dan ketakutan para raja, tetapi rahmat berada di atasnya. Ini adalah sifat dari Tuhan. Menurut William Paul, banyak statement dari William Shakespeare ini yang menyatakan tentang rahmat. Sangat mirip dengan istilah rahmat yang ada dalam agama Islam. Untuk itulah beliau berani mengatakan bahwa William Shakespeare adalah seorang Muslim. Nah sahabat, mungkin itu saja sedikit komentar dari saya. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.